Story 1. That I enjoy a more boring life. Yeah, I like to do fun things, but not as often as others. In the past, it has made me feel like I'm not really living life, but when I stopped comparing my life to others, I realized that I'm okay with how my life is going. Yeah, I want to make some changes and do some more fun things, but I'll never be the type of person to always have some event or activity to do, and that's okay. Story 2. I still emotionally or mentally freeze. It happens less and less as I've gotten older and wiser to this, but it's still very frustrating to me when it does happen. If you are not sure what I'm talking about, it's not having a reaction when someone says something to me that I don't have a response for. Often, it's a blindsided moment where I wouldn't expect someone to say something that catches me off guard. Story 3. I am a recovering drug addict and still an active alcoholic. I can admit this here to strangers. It is a lot harder to admit to myself and the people in my life. Story 4. My emotions don't make me weak. They make me human. For so long, I thought being vulnerable was a flaw, but I'm starting to see how much strength there is in letting yourself really feel and express what's inside. Story 5. I hung around all the wrong people growing up. Now that I got my life together, I have nobody to hang out with to do healthy things, such as working out or traveling. If I had thought a little more highly of myself back then, I would have decent friends as an adult. Story 6. I'm not a very good person in many ways. I've done a lot of really immoral, unkind, selfish things in my life. I know this is the truth and I accept it, but forgiving and moving forward in peace is another matter. Story 7. That I'll never have a pain-free day again. In my 20s and my life is messed up. Spoke to people who have been living with chronic pain for decades, and I can't understand how people have kids knowing this could happen. Story 8. My executive functioning is terrible in spite of having what they tell me is a very high intelligence quotient. I struggle with things like forms, scheduling appointments, sorting, and beginning projects. Starting things is so confusing that I get embarrassed. I made it into Mensa, but going through my mail is beyond frustrating. I was scolded by all my teachers, saying I was lazy and not working up to my ability. I skipped grades anyway and took college physics at age 13, but packing a suitcase is a struggle. I'm old now, but it's hurt my heart my whole life. I feel so inadequate. Story 9. A considerable amount of my personality and characteristics are just a set of attitudes, perspectives, and behaviors that I learned as a traumatized child, and are actually survival tools that I use to get through life as optimally and with as little pain and suffering as possible. Story 10. My family may be abusive. Even if there are good days, how I'm treated is not normal. I might be questioning my sexual orientation. I'm just scared of discrimination, going to hell, or being wrong. I really need a therapist and medication. I don't really like myself at all. Story 11. I do not inherently have less worth as a person compared to my late older brother just because I am more artistic while he was an engineer. Society makes it hard to believe that, but I am trying. Story 12. I am not a good person. I am not bad, but I am definitely not good. I have hurt people and will continue to hurt people accidentally, as that is life. No matter what people say, I am not a bad person because I have made mistakes. Nothing like killing or anything extreme, but immature mistakes. That does not make someone a bad person. Story 13. That, while I am a victim of upbringing, that does not mean that I can drag anyone down with me. While it is not my fault that I ended up the way I did, it is my responsibility to control my actions and minimize harm to others around me. I cannot repeat the cycle. Story 14. Within the last 3 years, I have learned that I've had at least 3 traumatic brain injuries and a year and 3 months ago, a major cerebellum stroke that I should not have walked away from. It's one thing to say that my body won't do what it once did. I do say that, but it is a whole other ball game when you have to say my brain won't do what it once did. I've accepted a lot more of it, but there are just things I can no longer do and jobs I can no longer work as I just don't have the executive function and quick thinking skills that I once had. Story 15. I am disabled and I cannot ever live my life the same as I once did. I can modify and I can push through a lot to enjoy moments of my life, but I will pay for it by being stuck in bed for days or weeks after. My entire life revolves around my disability whether I like it or not. Story 16. I am a sociopath and I will never be able to change that. I am a super devout Christian, and it's crushing that I am so incapable of emulating God's love and emotional nature. But I cannot help the way He made me, and I am starting to accept that means He does not look down on me for it. It is my actions that matter, and I choose not to do bad things even though I do not feel guilty at all when I do. Story 17. I'm aromantic/asexual. I don't think I was ever built to have a relationship. I feel as though my purpose is to just vibe with people and build friendships. I've always felt different, but it just makes sense now, and I'm still learning to accept who I am because I can't change the core of who I am, and that's okay. Story 18. That I don't have the relationship with my elderly mother that I once had. She moved away 20 years ago after my father passed away. I had to just accept that it was important for her to live a new life. Now she's getting up in years and wants me to cater to her needs. She's in good health. Her friends have all passed, and when she comes to visit, she literally annoys me. She thinks I'm still the kid she could boss around in my own home. I'm 60. She has a codependent relationship with my sibling who has a drug problem. It makes me feel guilty that I'm not excited about her presence. That is the truth that is hard to accept about myself. Story 19. I shape my own sense of self. I cannot solely blame others for when I feel bad about something they say. As if I did not feel a little bit of truth in it, it would not impact me. Story 20. Only I know my personality when I meet me, so I really need to learn to come off not too strong and not too scary when meeting others. That balance is really hard. Story 21. That I am not a bad person as some people think, but rather someone who needed a wake-up call to learn how to deal with my emotions. I had no way of managing them. Story 22. That I'm not attentive and a good listener because I care. It's hypervigilance and a desperate attempt to understand people and my surroundings so I can keep surviving. Story 23. I need lots of downtime, and I need more alone time than the average person. I skew towards being introverted. I am outgoing around people, but I then need lots of time to rest and recharge. Story 24. I shouldn't have any biological kids. My husband and I both have severe mental health issues. We've gotten a handle on it for the most part, but I would hate to see our child struggle the way we have or worse. I think I would really enjoy adopting. Providing a loving and stable home to a child that might not have had one otherwise would add so much to our lives. It's hard to come to terms with, but I think in the end, I'd really be glad to adopt instead of adding to an already overcrowded world. In a way, it almost seems selfish and narcissistic of me to want my own kids when there are already so many that need a good home and can't find one. Story 25. It was never my fault and I was just a child. My parents just sucked and perpetuated the abuse they received without ever wanting to break the cycle. I'm breaking the cycle and I've had to learn everything from scratch. But my child never flinches at a hand near him, and that makes it all worth it. Story 26. That weed is ultimately doing me no good. I am a daily smoker and quite avid about weed and the euphoria that it brings, and I feel like it helps me deal with my dysfunctional family until I can move out next year. But deep down, I know it's not a healthy coping strategy. I can't eat without being high, and if I don't have any bud, I'm pretty irritable. I know I need to stop, but my family makes that very hard to commit to. Hopefully, it will be something I'll find a bit easier next year when I move out. Story 27. This is my life now. I contracted COVID-19 4 years ago and am still fighting the effects of it daily. I can no longer work in a career I loved. I can no longer hike, kayak, or practice yoga. My brain, body, and emotions have changed. I lost who I worked so long to become. I have been holding on to the belief that this will end, that I can rejoin the life and dreams I had. I am just starting to deal with the idea that this is permanent. Story 28. That I always have been and always will be an unlovable person. I know it, but for some reason, I hang on to a slight hope that I am wrong only to be proven I am right time and time again. Story 29. That I am strong. I hate when people refer to me as strong, but looking back at everything I have been through and what I have overcome, I know that it takes some sort of strength. Story 30. I probably have a genetic predisposition to anxiety and depression. I am on medication now that helps tremendously. I probably missed out on being able to enjoy a lot of my life because I did not start earlier. Story 31. That I experienced the world very differently than most people. Like I knew I was crazy, but sometimes things are just different, and there's no way to explain that to someone who doesn't experience it. Story 32. Having undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and autism for so long means that my ability to mask as well as I do has led to me not being able to process my own emotions, so I just shut down completely. I moved 2 months ago, and my room was a mess because, after a day of pretending to be like everyone else, I just do not have the energy to function in a healthy way. I'm also learning that I might need to do things differently, such as clearing drawers so I know what I own or placing garbage cans in my living areas, because despite what my parents and family think, my brain works differently, and it's okay if I accommodate that. Story 33. That I am a handsome young man. I was actually quite ugly as a teenager. Even as a kid, there was a time when I looked darn awful. Not a single girl showed interest in me until I was 24. I am 31 now, because that's when my masculinity was sort of setting in on my face and I had a great body as well, nicely muscular, and still am. I started going to the gym because I thought that I could never change my face, but I could change my very skinny, tall body. I am 193 centimeters tall. That helped. But my face, I nearly committed suicide because of it. Many years of bullying and no attention apart from negative attention from women had left me insanely insecure. I visited surgeons that took X-ray pictures of my face, especially the jaw, in order to see if my face could be fixed by surgery. It was, I thought, the only way anyone would ever love me or even care. After that time, the surgeons said it would be impossible to fix my crooked jawline. At that moment, my insecurities didn't disappear, but I didn't care anymore. Instead of killing myself or spending more time feeling very depressed, I started talking to women. This was a bit before I turned 24, and I managed to get a couple of dates here and there and managed to flirt and kiss them. Eventually, I started sleeping with them, and I had quite a time being promiscuous, of which I am not proud of, fun as it was. I had a girlfriend even, but it didn't pan out. Now I am on the dating market again, and even the most beautiful women find me attractive, which for me feels quite strange. It's difficult to accept sometimes. But I guess I had a happy ending. I didn't kill myself after being so depressed due to believing nobody would ever love me. Story 34. That I'm not good at letting other people face the consequences of their actions. I try to rescue people when I think they could be in distress. Empathy is a skill, and I'm not at fault for feeling and expressing my feelings, but I do need to be better with my boundaries and over-empathizing with others. Story 35. It's all right to be a flawed person. Lots of people say it is our job in life to become a better person as time goes on. This simple rule has manifested into a bubble of ideas that are not very nuanced. If you have flaws, you're toxic and should be ashamed. I think we see this a lot on Reddit, where it feels like one negative personality trait is indicative of moral nature. I'm a pessimistic person. I always have been and accepted that I always will be. It's not because I wish ill things to happen, but rather because I know that the reality of life is not something found in optimism. The best I can do is remain neutral but honor the internal dialogue that focuses on worries and possible negative outcomes. The point is that I can still be a decent person and not have it right all the time. I can strive to be a good human being and be a pain in the neck to some people. I do not exist to make everyone on earth comfortable. Story 36. A lot of things. A big one is that I am human. I am not perfect and will not ever be. But it is even harder to accept that I do not have to be. I am putting immense pressure on myself with my own self-inflicted standards, but I am trying to learn not to. Story 37. I don't really enjoy being around people at all anymore. I'd prefer to sit at home, hang with my dogs, drink alone, and watch movies. I used to be a kind of social butterfly and liked being around people. Now I just get sick of people after a couple of hours. Story 38. I have a hard time carrying conversations that do not interest me. I do not even realize it until well after I have walked away. Sometimes days later. I want to be better at small talk. Story 39. I can be a major asshole, especially when I'm drinking. I'm an alcoholic but work in a field, as a lawyer, where drinking is a key aspect of networking. I'm still relatively young, but certainly looking to cut alcohol out of my life. It's causing negative effects and has ruined relationships of mine already. Story 40. I am a bumbling, socially awkward mess when I am not around a few people I know intimately, and I have to just accept it at this point. I may be able to improve my social skills, but that feeling won't go away for me. Story 41. That it wasn't my fault how I was treated as a child and that I continually hide my feelings and act like they are nothing because of how I was treated. Story 42. That I will be missing out on a lot of stuff normal people get to live as I am aromantic and asexual. Most times I am okay with it and I am happy with myself, but there are always a couple of times in the year when I feel so incredibly lonely and like some sort of failure. I also live a very boring and lonely life since I do not have many friends and I am introverted and not a fan of going out. But that is usually not a problem for me as I have always been happy being a homebody and having hobbies most often seen in retired people.